Aye, aye. We're here. We have reached the finale. Are you ready? There seems to be a lot of singing in this chapter. Here we go. Our final read through of The Wind and the Willows, written by Kenneth Grahame. And of course, for the final time, you know I'm reading the Wordsworth edition. Get your copy, get your tea, get your slice of cake, get cosy, and we'll finish the story. Here we go. If you remember, we left the story last night just as Toad was deciding an order of proceedings for his banquet. Remember, this is the order of proceedings. Speech by Toad. There will be other speeches by Toad during the evening. Address by Toad. Synopsis. Our prison system, the waterways of Old England, horse dealing and how to deal, property, its rights and its duties, back to the land, a typical English squire. Song by Toad, composed by himself. Other compositions by Toad will be sung in the course of the evening by the composer. The idea pleased him mightily, and he worked very hard and got all of the letters finished by noon, at which hour it was reported to him that there was a small and rather bedraggled weasel at the door, inquiring timidly whether he could be any service to the gentleman. Toad swaggered out and found it was one of the prisoners of the previous evening, very respectful and anxious to please. He patted him on the head, shoved the bundle of invitations into his paw, and told him to cut along quick and deliver them as fast as he could, and if he liked to come back again in the evening, perhaps there might be a shilling for him, or again, perhaps there mightn't. And the poor weasel seemed really quite grateful and hurried off eagerly to do his mission. When the other animals came back to luncheon very boisterous and breezy after a morning on the river, the mole, whose conscience had been pricking him, looked doubtfully at Toad, expecting to find him sulky or depressed. Instead, he was so uppish and inflated that the mole began to suspect something, while the rat and the badger exchanged significant glances. As soon as the meal was over, Toad thrust his paws deep into his trouser pockets, remarked casually, "Well, look after yourselves, you fellows. Ask for anything you want," and was swaggering off in the direction of the garden, where he wanted to think out an idea or two for his coming speeches, when the rat caught him by the arm. Toad rather suspected what he was after, and did his best to get away, but when the badger took him firmly by the other arm, he began to see that the game was up. The two animals conducted him between them into the small smoking room that opened out of the entrance hall, shut the door, and put him into a chair. Then they both stood in front of him, while Toad sat silent and regarded them with such suspicion and ill humour. "Now, look here, Toad," said the rat. "It's about this banquet, and very sorry I am to have to speak to you like this, but we want you to understand clearly, once and for all, that there are going to be no speeches and no songs. Try and grasp the fact that on this occasion we are not arguing with you, we are telling you." Toad saw that he was trapped. They understood him, they saw through him, they'd got ahead of him. His pleasant dream was shattered. "Mayn't I sing them just one little song?" he pleaded, piteously. "No, not one little song," replied the rat firmly, though his heart bled as he noticed the trembling lip of the poor disappointed Toad. "It's no good, Toady. You know well that your songs are all conceit and boasting and vanity, and your speeches, they're all self-praise and gross exaggeration and gas," said the badger in his common way. "It's for your own good, Toady," went on the rat. "You know you must turn over a new leaf sooner or later, and now seems a splendid time to begin, a sort of turning point in your career. Please don't think that saying all this doesn't hurt me more than it hurts you." Toad remained a long while plunged in thought. At last he raised his head, and the traces of strong emotion were visible on his features. "You have conquered, my friend," he said in broken accents. "It was, to be sure, but a small thing I'd asked. Merely leave to blossom and expand for yet one more evening, to let myself go and hear the tumultuous applause that always seems to me somehow to bring out my best qualities. However, you are right, I know, and I am wrong. Henceforth, I will be a very different Toad. My friends, you shall never have occasion to blush for me again. But oh dear, this is a hard world." And, pressing the handkerchief to his face, he left the room with faltering footsteps. "Badger," said Rat, "I feel like a brute. Oh, and how do you feel?"
"Oh, I know." I know, said the Badger gloomily. "But the thing had to be done. This good fellow has got to live here and hold his own and be respected. Would you have him, a common laughing stock, mocked and jeered at by stoats and weasels?"
"Of course not," said the Rat. "And talking of weasels, it's lucky we came upon that little weasel just as he was setting off with Toad's invitations. I suspected something from what you told me and had a look at one or two. They were simply disgraceful. I confiscated the lot, and the good mole is now sitting in the blue boudoir filling up plain, simple invitation cards." At last the hour for the banquet began to draw near, and Toad, who on leaving the others had retired to his bedroom, was still sitting there, melancholy and thoughtful, his brow resting on his paw. He wondered long and deeply. Gradually his countenance cleared, and he began to smile long, slow smiles. Then he took to giggling in a shy, self-conscious manner. At last he got up, locked the door, drew the curtains across the windows, collected all the chairs in the room and arranged them in a semicircle, and took up his position in front of them, swelling visibly. Then he bowed, coughed twice, and letting himself go with uplifted voice, he sang to the enraptured audience that his imagination so clearly saw. "The Toad came home. There was panic in the parlour and howling in the hall. There was crying in the cowshed and some shrieking in the stall." Still in Badger voice. "When the Toad came home, there was smashing of the window and a crashing of the door. There was chivying of weasels that fainted on the floor. When the Toad came home, bang go the drums, the trumpeters are tooting, and the soldiers are saluting, and the cannon they are shooting, and the motor cars are hooting. When the Toad came home, shout hooray, and let each one of the crowd try to shout it very loud, in honour of an animal of whom you're justly proud. When the Toad came home." He sang this very loud, with great unction and expression, and when he'd done, he sang it all over again. Mr. S will not. Then he heaved a deep sigh, a long, long sigh. Then he dipped his hairbrush in the water jug, parted his hair in the middle and plastered it down very straight and sleek on each side of his face, and, unlocking the door, went quietly down the stairs to greet his guests, who he knew must be assembling in the drawing room. All the animals cheered when he entered and crowded round to congratulate him and say nice things about his courage and his cleverness and his fighting qualities. But Toad only smiled faintly and murmured, "Not at all," or sometimes, "For a change." On the contrary, Otter, who was standing on the hearthrug, describing to an admiring circle of friends exactly how he would have managed things had he been there, came forward with a shout, threw his arm around Toad's neck and tried to take him round the room in triumphal progress. But Toad, in a mild way, was rather snubby to him, remarking gently as he disengaged himself, "Badger was the mastermind, and Mole and Water Rat bore the brunt of the fighting. I merely served in the ranks and did little or nothing." The animals were evidently puzzled and taken aback by this unexpected attitude of his, and Toad felt, as he moved from one guest to the other, making his modest responses, that he was an object of absorbing interest to everyone. The Badger had ordered everything of the best, and the banquet was a great success. There was much talking and laughter and chaff among the friends, but through it all Toad, who of course was in the chair, looked down his nose and murmured pleasant nothings to the animals on either side of him, and at intervals he stole a glance at the Badger and the Rat, and always when he looked they were staring at each other with their mouths open, and this gave him the greatest satisfaction. Some of the younger and livelier animals, as the evening wore on, got whispering to each other that things were not so amusing as they used to be in the good old days, and there were some knockings on the table, and cries of "Toad! Speech! Speech from the Toad! Song! Mr. Toad song!" But Toad only shook his head, raised one paw in mild protest, and by pressing delicacies on his guests, by topical small talk, and by earnest inquiries after members of their families not yet old enough to appear at social functions, managed to convey to them that this dinner was being run on strictly conventional lines. He was, indeed, an altered Toad. After this climax, the four animals continued to lead their lives, so rudely broken in upon by civil war, in great joy and contentment, undisturbed by further risings or invasions. Toad, after due consultation with his friends, selected a handsome gold chain and locket set with pearls, which he dispatched to the gaoler's daughter with a letter that even Badger admitted to be modest, grateful and appreciative, and the engine driver in his turn was properly thanked and compensated for all his pains and trouble. Under severe compulsion from the Badger, even the barge woman was, with some trouble, sought out, and the value of her horse discreetly made good to her, though Toad did kick himself terribly for this, holding himself to be an instrument of fate, sent to punish fat women with mottled arms who couldn't tell a real gentleman when they saw one. Sometimes in the long course of summer evenings the friends would take a stroll together in the wild wood, now successfully tamed so far as they were concerned, and it was pleasing to see how respectfully they were greeted by the inhabitants, and how the mother weasels would bring their young ones to the mouths of their holes and say, pointing, "Look, baby, there goes the great Mr. Toad, and that's the gallant Water Rat, a terrible fighter, he's walking along with him, and yonder comes the famous Mr. Mole, of whom you have also heard your father tell." But when their infants were fractious and quite beyond control, they would quiet them by telling how, if they didn't hush them and not fret them, the terrible grey Badger would up and get them. This was a base libel on Badger, who, though he cared little about society, was rather fond of children, but it never failed to have its full effect. There you go. That is the end of our Wind in the Willows playlist. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, for me, I can see that it wasn't as popular as I'd hoped it would have been. Just maybe it was because it was a classic. I don't know. Maybe it's because people have been having their tea time. Maybe they're out shopping or something. I don't know. But yeah, there you go. That was Wind in the Willows. Very autumnal. But now we move on to something quite Christmassy, don't we? We're going to move on to Terry Pratchett's Hogfather. So we've done we've done all of the Tiffany Aching books, haven't we? And we started to do the Night Watch books, and we'll continue further on down the line to do the Night Watch books. This one is our first different book from the Discworld, so we'll enjoy that one. Like I said to you before, I didn't really enjoy it, but there is an adaptation of it done, I think it was by like Sky TV or something, of Hogfather. You can have a look at that and get the gist of the story if you want to first, but I'll read the book in its entirety. But that brings me to my next little problem. I told you, I thought I had it over there. I don't have it over there. So I ordered it this morning. It won't get here until Friday. But that's kind of handy because tomorrow night I've got quite a late meeting at work, and then on Thursday night I've got Bo's parents' evening, so I wouldn't have been able to record a story anyway. So this is Tuesday, and I'm saying finale of Wind in the Willows. Bye bye. The next story will start on Friday, so there'll be a 2-day gap. All right? Okay. Thank you very much. If you have followed along with Wind in the Willows and you've been listening to it, it's really, really nice to kind of get that dialogue going between us, hasn't it? Just that communication. Just when you comment on things, whether it's about voices, whether it's about, oh, I remember this chapter, or even if it's just about the weather where you are. Snowing here yesterday it was. True story. It all counts, and like I say, otherwise, because I can't see you, and I just feel like I'm sitting here looking at a screen with a big messy pile of washing behind it. But yeah, so thank you for letting me know that you are there. It does make a big difference. So I'll see you on Friday for our next playlist. See ya. Have a good sleep.